I'm going to be talking to Kevin Krausert of Avatar Innovations about a new partnership with the University of Calgary to start the Avatar Carbon Removal Accelerator that's going to help technology companies compete for the $100 million X Prize carbon removal competition. So welcome to the interview, Kevin.
Great, thanks for having me.
Why don't you give us an overview of the competition and what the accelerator is going to do to help Alberta companies prepare for it?
For sure. So, X Prize, is the world's largest or most prestigious technology competition, really focused on breakthrough technologies. Building upon the Energy COSIA Carbon X Prize, which was a carbon to value X Prize, we've been delighted to sign a partnership agreement with X Prize to support companies going into the Elon Musk Foundation's $100 million prize for carbon removal. So that is breakthrough technologies that can pull CO2 out of the atmosphere, either through air, land, water, or rock solutions. And what carbon removal presents is one of the world's best chances for not just stopping the effects of climate change, but actually reversing them. So we're going to be working with any interested parties from around the world interested in competing in the X Prize to work through a curriculum, process, technology roadmaps, lab access, as well as customer partnerships, which in our view is the most important thing for emerging technology companies to survive in the long run and have the industrial scale that's going to be required to win this X Prize.
Now, before we get into the first question, Kevin, I think we should acknowledge that the oil sands just announced a net zero by 2050 oil sands pathways initiative. They currently generate about 83 megatons a year of carbon dioxide, and they're going to get to net zero by 2050. Carbon capture is slated to be responsible for about 50% of those gains. So this has real world practical applications.
Yes, and to be clear though, this is carbon removal, not carbon capture. Now, there's a lot of similarities between carbon capture and carbon removal, but this is pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. Now, we have to do both, and a lot of the technologies that are involved in carbon capture are involved in carbon removal. But to be specific, this is carbon removal, so it's not a direct carbon capture piece. But I will say, building on your initial conversation, that yes, this is a sea change of industry coming to the table and recognizing that the solutions to climate change are complex, and we're going to need an all hands on deck approach. And so, how do we bring industry to the table, recognizing there's a lot of sectors that are very difficult to decarbonize, oil and gas production is here, and so it brings us as a meaningful contributor to the biggest challenge of our time, climate change.
Right, and the link between carbon capture and carbon capture and carbon removal, as you said, is of course the creation of the carbon ecosystem, as you call it. Could you describe what that is, please?
Yeah, for sure. So the reality is that we're talking hard technology, we're talking chemistry, we're talking chemical engineering, solutions, solvents. What can we mix CO2 with to either capture it from a flue sack or pull it out of the atmosphere? And so they're all very related entities. Inside Calgary, we just ran the Energy COSIA Carbon to Value X Prize. And through that, a lot of infrastructure was built at the University of Calgary from labs and research. And also the Alberta Carbon Conversion Technology Center, which is just outside of Calgary, one of the world's leading carbon testing facilities in the world. So Calgary really has this incredible ecosystem of not just research and testing, but also industry players that actually really get it. So that's why we're so delighted to have brought in 5 of the largest energy companies in the world, Shell, Imperial, Suncor, Enbridge, and Cenovus into this, because inside those organizations, they have a tremendous amount of horsepower around carbon technologies. So how can we repurpose these all together and put Canada and Calgary on the map for the world's largest and most audacious incentive prize in history?
Well, let's talk about the process of getting there. And one of the issues around these technologies and the startups is always what they call a valley of death, where they get maybe out of the lab into the pilot and demonstration phases, but getting to commercialization and up to scale is that's a problem. And capital is often unavailable for that. And will your accelerator program deal with that at all? I suppose having the big five energy companies at the table doesn't hurt that.
Yeah, and we've specifically designed this accelerator to overcome that, in the sense that the large corporates, they get industrial scale. And a lot of the emerging startups, Canada is blessed with a lot of public money for research and as well as a lot of grant money for startups. But there is this disconnect between a company that gets, $500,000 worth of angel investment and grants to get to industrial scale. And the challenge they have is always customer access. For a large capital intensive, highly regulated, safety critical business like a large energy firm, to play around with an emerging technology company, you have to fundamentally speak a different language. So what we're specifically doing is bringing those large energy companies to the table at the beginning with the hope of developing that partnership. So if you have a partnership with a large capital is going to become available. And so that's how we're trying to kind of unlock that, traditional and distinct from other accelerators that, in my view, work exceptionally well in the tech sector and software sectors, however, struggle in the hard tech sector because few of them have brought the industry partner to the table from day one. So if you're admitted into the Avatar Carbon Removal Accelerator, that will be your opportunity to work weekly with a large partner to have a partnership in place, ideally for your February 1 early bird milestone submissions to XPRIZE.
And we should also point out that Suncor, which is one of the five, has a long track record of investing in and working with startup companies. But that model is not all that common in the oil and gas industry. The other players there have, a shorter track record, shall we say. So that's a great idea that you've got. Now, what about the role that the University of Calgary will play?
Yeah, so the University of Calgary well, I know there's some teams at the University of Calgary entering and competing, but we've put together a very special team of industry experts, both from engineering, physics, and science and chemistry, who will be doing a process of what we're calling faculty speed dating. So once a team is admitted, that will identify the labs and the resources and the researchers at the University of Calgary that have expertise to the particular technology. So through that process, very early on in the accelerator, they'll get matched with a researcher at the university with expertise to that, who can guide them through the labs and the testing facilities available, as well as the subject matter experts available. So you don't go down a physics rabbit hole that another team has already gone down. So we can really speed that up. And then for the February 1st submissions, you'll have a technology roadmap with labs, resources, because you have to win the XPRIZE, you have to verify that you're actually pulling carbon out of the atmosphere. And so the testing facilities is great.
Right. Well, thank you very much for this, Kevin. Really appreciate your insights.
Thanks for having me.